So the first chapter, to answer your question about evil doesn't exist, that presupposes that everyone's evil. I don't like the word evil. I'm talking about that we suffer from the human condition, which is that we suffer from these angers, egocentricities and alienations, and that but when we're thinking about that issue, all-important issue, from inside the cave we can't make sense of it, we just come up with a bunch of lies. But if we look about it very simply, and in a denial-free way, as we do in Chapter 2, we'll find the answers right there in front of us. Because quite obviously, we became conscious when we must have, before being conscious, we must have been controlled by instincts. And if you think about that, when we became conscious, it must have led to a battle between the two. And if you think about that a bit, that's what upset us. So we did become upset for a damn good reason. We're the bloody hero. The conscious mind is nature's greatest invention, surely. And since the conscious mind had to suffer all this unjust condemnation for some 2 million years, we must be the heroes of the story of life on Earth. So suddenly, instead of being banishment-deserving evil monsters, we turn out to be the heroes of the story of life on Earth. The best thing since sliced bread and beyond. This is a marvellous, but it's found by not living in the cave, trying to deny that we're in denial. Once you accept the possibility that we are in denial and start thinking about things, that's all I do. I go through the book applying that idea that if you try to think about any of the great problems facing us, such as you get to Chapter 3, so that's Chapter 2. Chapter 1 is just a demolition of all the bullshit biology. Chapter 2 is the real biology that's found by thinking truthfully, and I'm not clever. The answers are right there in front of us. All we have to do is look. The third great truth in my book is Chapter 3, and that's, well, what's the meaning of existence? And it says the meaning of existence is to develop the order of matter, that everything we look at, the tree, it is composed of parts. It's got leaves and branches, and within those branches it's got fibres, and within those fibres it's got cells, and within those cells it's got compounds, and within those compounds it's got atoms and molecules, and there's a hierarchy of parts in that system. Everything is witness to this development of order of matter, and there's a physical law that makes it happen, which is negative entropy. It's the most obvious truth on planet Earth that the meaning of existence is to develop ever larger and more stable wholes. It's what's happening all around us. Everything, the word thing, is a recognition of something, an arrangement of matter that's enduring through time. Now, there's a huge problem with that in terms of the human condition. For a larger whole to form and all the parts to cooperate and stay harmonious together, they must all act selflessly, consider the welfare of the larger whole above their own welfare, because if they start off behaving selfishly, it'll disintegrate. So selflessness is what the glue that holds a whole together, whereas selfishness is disintegrative and divisive. So if the truth of the meaning of existence is to develop the order of matter, then selflessness is the theme, the glue that makes it all happen, which is really what we mean by the word love, unconditional selflessness. It makes wholes stay together. But if you admit that truth, you're back confronting the human condition. Well, why aren't we cooperative, selfless and loving? Why are we divisive? It condemns us. So we don't want to admit that truth. In fact, that's the most obvious truth on planet Earth, integrative meaning, and it's the most fearful truth because it's condemned us to hell. So we deny it. In fact, we're so afraid of that truth, we deified and made it God. So God is the personification of the truth of integrative meaning. And if you read quotes from Einstein and Stephen Hawking there, they recognise that. You could call the order that's apparent in the universe and on planet Earth God, because that's really the underlying thing that's going on, this development of order. So that's Chapter 3, and that's a truth that I'm suggesting is also denied because of our fear of the human condition. And Chapter 4 is, well, how do we acquire moral instincts? Remember I said that evolutionary psychology said, oh, we got that like ants and bees because we're trying to foster the genes in others around us, our relatives, which is rubbish. We acquired them through nurturing, but again, and you'll see the bonobos and all that talked about in Chapter 4. But again, that's the truth we couldn't face while we couldn't explain the human condition, because no mother, since everyone became angry, egocentric and has been able to love her infant as much as they all were before we became angry, egocentric. So all mothers feel guilty, Parents would rather admit to being an axe murderer than a bad parent, So again, that was a great truth we couldn't admit until we could defend the human condition. So first explain the human, gets the guilt off our back, then we can admit all these truths. Integrative meaning, that nurturing made us human, how we acquired our moral instincts. So that's chapter 4 and 5. Chapter 6 is how we became conscious. You can read, and again, you'll see the blocks to that as our fear of the human condition. And then chapter 7 is, well, the whole history of this. Let's present the whole history of humans since we were like primates when this nurturing started to develop us into a cooperative whole, right through to the human condition emerging some 2 million years ago, and it got worse and worse and became more angry, and you the last 2,000 years we were in a horrendously dangerous state of terminal alienation, terminally upset, living deeper in the cave of dishonesty. And so let's describe that whole journey truthfully, now that we can. Now it's safe to. So it talks about this journey, amazing journey of description of. So you can read chapter 7, you'll never have read the true story of humans. It's the greatest story ever told, and it's never been told before. So that's chapter 7. And chapter 8 is the one everyone wants to know, well, how does this help me? How does this transform my life? How does being able to understand human existence, understand the human condition, the dark side of myself, heal myself? Well, the obvious answer is, like Carl Jung was everything, wholeness for humans is the ability to own our own shadow. So if we can own our own shadow, meaning the dark side of ourselves, make sense of that, we'll become whole again. We can reconcile the two parts of ourselves. So old Adam Stalker flew off course to that island. The moment that he can finally sit down with his instinctive self and say, now this is why I had to do it, mate, get off my case, I'm a goodie and not a baddie after all, he no longer has to get angry or alienated or egocentric. All those things go. So this is incredibly relieving. The day that Adam Stork finds the knowledge that he's setting out to find to finally explain himself is the day that all his troubles end. And that's how it ends, how this information transforming life is what chapter 8 explains. So that's the book. And it's a journey based on explaining the human condition, right? So that's the whole story about this book. So if you go home and suppose you reread chapter 1 and then chapter 2, I think you should find it, and you can read it. It's all freely online. We're not trying to make money out of this. These answers are considered so important that they're made free to everybody around the world. So you can just get them online and you can read it yourself, you can download it, and I've got to make a voice one where you can listen to it while you're in your car or whatever, but it's all there, and then if we reconvene day after tomorrow, and hopefully if you have a chance to have another look at chapter 1, and then we can see if this little talk didn't make it all a little bit more understandable and helped a lot, because we're hoping it will. We're going to learn from that if it does help, and if it does, then other people can get the benefit of me doing exactly this, raving on, and they can watch me talking to you, and they can, and some of your questions are very good, or they're all very good questions, you know, and hopefully we can make some sense, and we can see if it helps. So thanks a million for coming along.
Thanks. Bye.